Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Building SaaS on AWS. My name is Derek, developer advocate at AWS, and you have joined us for this is the resurrection of this show. So this is the first episode of Building SaaS on AWS, coming to you from the APJ region. You may be familiar with the program, with Gunnar as the host, which comes from Europe. But this is a very different flavor of the Building SaaS on AWS show. What is Building SaaS on AWS? Well, it is the definitive show for learning how to run SaaS products. We talk about best products, best practices, pardon me. We talk to fantastic SaaS builders and how they have built those products. And hopefully, at the end of this hour, you will come away with some of those best practices and knowledge on how to build excellent SaaS products on AWS. So today I'm joined by Roy, who's going to talk to us all about FinOps and cost optimization, and also my co-host, Christopher. So I'm going to ask you both, gentlemen, to introduce yourselves. So Christopher, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Christopher Logan. I am the Senior Manager for Solutions Architecture for its vision here in AWS. So we do co-host this show, and I'm here to make amusing yet useless comments for the next hour.
Never useless, Christopher. Never useless. Always amusing. And
well, let's see.
no. I'm confident. And Roy, what about yourself? Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, so my name is Roy. I'm a co-founder and CEO of finout, based in Tel Aviv. Started my way in the Israeli military, like most in the intelligence CNS, working on cloud, building cloud there, even before AWS. And then joined a company called Logs.io. I've been responsible for the entire infrastructure, so really a long time AWS user and builder. Built multiple SaaS products on AWS. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're super excited to have you, Roy, all the way from Tel Aviv. And because we're talking about cost optimization and FinOps today, I've actually prepared. I'm having problems with words today. Prepared a little survey. So if you're on the chat, this is for you. So the way this works is if you have an answer to this question, put in the number in the chat. So I am currently not using cost optimization. So if I put in 1 in the chat and hit enter, you'll see that boom, that is my answer. So we're interested in for all people listening, how they're currently tracking and if they're tracking cost optimization in AWS and how are they using it. So they are using tags and policies to track all your single resources. Are you using Cost Explorer to give you a holistic approach? Are you using third-party SaaS products? And we're going to talk about one of those today. Or is there other things that you're using to track your cost optimization? Don't be shy. Put a number in the chat. It's okay. It's not going to burn. It's just to give an idea of how you're tracking with FinOps today on AWS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Is anybody live in the chat? Hello? Excellent. Thank you. We have a chatter. So I'll put the survey up a little bit later in the show. Thank you. We've got a few more who are using Cost Explorer. So that's great. It really gives an insight into what everybody's doing. So I'll put this again up later on in the show. But with any further ado, let's ask you some questions, Roy. So the first one is, how did you come up with the idea of finout?
So in my previous role in Logs.io, Logs.io is like a Datadog and Splunk competitor. So we need to ingest multiple streams of logs and metrics all live. And as an infrastructure company, infrastructure was obviously one of the more expensive stuff that we need to do. And there we needed to like balance between SLA and cost efficiency, right? So usually we needed to bring up more instances and like auto scale quicker, and be a bit more open to spending in order to support our SLA. But like the week after, we looked at our AWS cost, and it was right. No, this is too high. This is starting to be unprofitable. Like our margins started to to change. So we needed to reduce those services as well, and like pick the right instances, right size it by our eyes, and do those kinds of stuff before the after week that we needed to focus on SLA again. So keeping that balance was always something that was like extremely hard. So understanding how much we were spending on AWS started to get to be a commodity, right? So it's Cost Explorer can do it now. We use the other third-party solutions that are great at it. But the significantly more difficult question is the why part, right? So the AWS bill have gone up by 5%. Great, but is this good or not? Like, does that match our revenue? Does it match what we expected? And how much do we spend, to support a specific tenant? How much do we spend to support a specific feature or product? And what's our unit economics look like? So those were daily questions that we had, and we didn't have any any product that can help us to achieve that. So we just decided to build one.
You saw the need. Absolutely. So, Christopher, you deal with customers in part of your daily role within AWS. Is that consistent with what you see with customers?
Yeah, look, what we've seen, and across all customers really, and is the macroeconomics of what is happening in the world over the last 6 to 9 months has shifted everything. Like, we have gone from an age where valuations go through the roof. It is get more users on board regardless of the cost, and add more features, more users, to the point where everything is about profitability, where it is about controlling costs, looking at ways to save. Valuations are now being more realistic. VC and investor money is starting to, go down. So the cost management, particularly of infrastructure, of cloud, of development, of feature development, is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. We're seeing it across the board, all around the world, that it is one of, if not the top 2 real concerns of almost all of our customers at this point. And so we're having those conversations all the time, and something like finout is an amazing, opportunity for customers and other people to understand, one, how to optimize, but 2, where that cost is coming from is the big, and as Roy said, understanding where that cost is coming from is super important. We also have a lot of SaaS companies, and hence this show, who really care about the economics of their customers, right? Unit economics, how much is each customer costing? How much is each user costing? And how does that translate to their underlying infrastructure usage? Very hard to work out if you don't know what you're doing, and if you aren't prepared for how that fluctuates within your underlying infrastructure usage. So this is an awesome way to try and help customers really have a good understanding so that they can make the right calls that aren't just guesswork.
Yep, for sure. And is there any particular industries that you're seeing, or is it across the board? Because I know, and you probably ask Roy this later, but specific industries that you see, or is it just everybody?
Yeah, so I think we see it like really across the board. So as long as companies are spending lots of money on AWS, they start to care about it. So it doesn't even have to be like a huge part of their cogs, but it's starting to be one of the most major things that they need to do. So like infrastructure companies, cybersecurity companies, healthcare, like super regulated industries that need to save lots of data. is extremely hard, and even retailers that are running on super low margins and really care about every dollar that they spend. So it really is across the board.
Yeah, so from our customer base as well, it is across every industry. Absolutely, some industries are harder hit by it than others, so it's a bigger concern. But what we are also seeing is, not whilst everyone really is concerned about optimizing their costs, there is a massive opportunity for companies to then look at how do we save costs on things that we aren't using or don't need, and then start looking at how do we then use it to develop something new, to go and actually innovate and use that saving to go and propel a whole bunch of other market conditions that they can now take advantage of. So there's a real benefit here to look deeply into that and then use it as essentially to propel a whole bunch of and use the market conditions to propel their business. Roy, when you use finout, is there a company's looking at, here is a minimum spend that I should now go use this, or is it broader than that?
So obviously the bigger the AWS bill, probably the bigger the savings you can have. But we start to see smaller and smaller companies start to understand that AWS is going to be very expensive, and if they're not gonna put an emphasis on cost control from day one and building while understanding the unit economics, it's gonna be very hard for them to start to do that when they're scaling. The project is going to be significantly bigger. So we start to see more and more mid-sized companies starting to purchase solutions like finout to establish that baseline, and then build while designing for profitability, and building their AWS architecture, taking product decisions with cost as one it's another factor that they're using while doing that.
Cool. And given that, is there any stats that you could provide around, what average cost savings you've actually made for customers?
So again, really depends on the maturity of they have on with AWS saving and optimizations. So it can range from 30% that you can save in a couple of days just by right sizing instances, purchasing commitments, and terminating idle stuff, changing technologies, and doing those sort of stuff. But the more mature companies are often start to use finout in order to analyze the more advanced use cases. So what's our price per unit gonna look like? Is that growing? What's our Kubernetes cluster utilization? How we can work on optimizing that, and eventually getting all the way to cost per customer. And the goal here is usually not to cut cost right now, but to be able to double our revenue, but only increasing the cost by 50%. So this is where the real optimization is happening. It's economy of scale should kick in, but economy of scale is not kicking in if you're not paying attention for what's happening, because overspending is very easy.
For sure, 100%. No, so before we get into the demo, and I'm sure you've got a demo ready for us, Roy, I just want to reach out and say, if you've just joined us, you're lucky. You've just joined the Building SaaS on AWS show, and today we're talking about all things cost optimization and the finout SaaS application with what's your official title, Roy? I forgot your official title.
I'm the co-founder and CEO.
Co-founder and CEO of finout. So if any questions around cost optimization and FinOps in general, this is the right place to be. So without any further ado, Roy, shall we jump into the demo?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Am I showing the right place?
Yes, you are.
Excellent. This is a good day.
So let's talk about how we integrate into finout. So first thing that we need to do is connect our cost and usage report from AWS. So AWS is very good at generating very, very detailed billing information, but the issue is it's very, very hard to read and to visualize. So with finout, we can just do that and connect to AWS and connect to other clouds and other services. But AWS is obviously like the most important one that we have. So we're just connecting with external role, external ID, and fetch information directly from the S3 bucket of the account. Once it's within finout, we're getting into our mega bill concept. And the finout mega bill is essentially our ability to standardize costs from AWS and also like other clouds and other like external services that cost a lot of money, like Snowflake and Datadog and Databricks and those kinds of stuff. And we put it all into a standardized way, including Kubernetes integration that we're gonna touch about in a minute. So let's drill down into AWS costs. AWS have multiple services.
Sorry, Roy. How are we connected into the account? And how does a customer get started if they want to connect their AWS topology or account structure to finout?
So we have standard cloud formation template that a customer can just deploy on their AWS account, which just creates the cost and usage report from AWS and configure the finout role that we need, including the external ID. And that's it. I mean, as long as like if a customer has like a multiple AWS organization kind of flow, we need access to the root account, and then we can just see it all. So very, very easy to integrate.
Excellent.
Cool. So when we're looking into AWS, we can continue to drill down, as low and as detailed as we want to get even all the way to the actual resource within AWS. We can build and filter and group by anything to get a very detailed kind of view of our cost and spending. Where it starts to get more interesting is that I think Kubernetes is, as people call it, the modern OS of the cloud. And the issue with Kubernetes, other than its underlying complexity, is also the cost structure of the service. So when I'm looking at the cost and usage report from AWS, I'm getting cost per instance. So we can look at multiple instances, how much did we spend on those, but we actually use those instances in order to run a Kubernetes cluster. So suddenly we have like another level of abstraction on top of the build that we're getting from AWS, and we need to do that translation, right? So how much do we spend per pod? So it's based on the proportional usage of that pod from that instance. So this is one of the most basic concept within finout. So in order to do that, we can just connect to Prometheus that the company is probably already running in order to start to generate Kubernetes views. So let's look at in EKS namespace weekly view. I hope that's the right one. But essentially, we can start to build how much money we spend.
So Roy, currently, what we're seeing is not changing. Are you changing the finout dashboard? Because currently you're seeing the finout dashboard, and you're clicking. You said you were clicking stuff, and nothing's changing. Are we seeing the right screen?
Oh, no, it's supposed to change. Let me stop sharing and reshare. Maybe
Yep.
Live demos always, right?
Oh, absolutely. We are live, folks. It's always the way. So if you have any questions for Roy, just pop them in the chat. There we go. Let's try again. There we go. That's different. Yep. We see your mouse moving as well. That's always a positive.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome. So everything I just shared till now did not work great. So now we jumped into, let me reiterate it, into one of the Kubernetes views that we have. So we can start to build multiple views on top of Kubernetes. And essentially, what we have here is our ability to filter on specific cloud or specific instances or whatever, and then group by a specific Kubernetes resource or service or whatever that we like. So using the Prometheus metrics that we built that we fetched from Prometheus, and we can talk about how we do it later on when looking at the architecture. We ingest those numbers into finout and essentially like allocate the proportional section of the cost of the instance all the way to the pod. So we can take into account, the actual effective instance price. So how much did you pay, after discounts, after EDP agreements, after commitments, and those kinds of stuff, and really allocate the proportional section directly to the pod, giving full visibility into Kubernetes as well.
Yep. And how far ingrained is the cost? So you tracking costs every minute, every hour? How are you doing that?
So it really depends on the specific service and requirements. So with the AWS cost, we take cost every day because this is the granularity of the cost and use report. But within that cost and use report, we have cost per hour, and within Prometheus, we can get costs every 10 minutes, and then we can be very accurate on the proportional allocation of the pods without compromising on on data availability.
Yeah, nice.
So within finout, we can build dashboards for costs, specifically looking at Kubernetes, but we can also look at S3 cost, RDS cost, EC2 cost. So this is the predefined dashboards that we have, but everything is customizable. So think of finout like a Grafana-like solution. You can just build whatever visualization that you want. We can start to see our saving plans, reserved and spot coverage, EC2 storage costs, data transfer. So really do whatever that is really makes sense for our own specific view, and we can build unlimited dashboards. So one of the use cases is that specific teams have specific dashboards and views and stuff that they want to do, and we can just create the views that specific team wants to have, something for management, something for finance, something for the DevOps team, and just send them those dashboards or schedule them so they can get their own specific views of how we covered, how much we're spending, including Kubernetes or any other service.
Yep. And so obviously the next logical step, once you've reported on your costs and you have dashboards, is to feed some steps back into the account. Is there anything, or any automation, or is there any actions that you can take from FinOps to maybe address some of the cost irregularities, for want of a better word, that you're seeing?
Yeah. So first of all, like finout can alert on anomalies. Let's show that for a second. So if a specific cost is changing, and we can talk about like virtual tagging in a minute, because I think it's a very interesting concept here. But we can show a specific. So here in this Kubernetes namespace, we got a cost anomaly of $1,000. Like this is something you should start to pay attention for. So we're always like tracking the baseline and changes that are happening within your environment, and we can just show them. But where it's coming, to actual optimization phases, like we have a bunch of like predefined set of cost optimization rules that we can have. So for example, like we can analyze saving plans. So per instance type, like we have on T3 on US East 1. We have lots of potential saving because one of our most used instances. So finout can analyze like the baseline usage of saving plans and let you know like how you should commit based on your specific plan that you want to do. Nice. We can also show you like right sizing. We can show you what's idle and doesn't need to run. If you have an EC2 instance that you're not using, RDS that you're not using, it's insanely common. GP2 and GP3 is one of my favorite examples, right? So AWS released a new technology that is better and cheaper, and there's really no reason not to use it, but companies are still like very slow in migrating from GP2 to GP3. So this is constantly happening. So we can just let them know when something is not not utilized, that they can just use the AWS service better, and we can just surface it together with the $sign. So once the company sees that the potential savings and what's happening, it can be like a good incentive into running that.
For sure.
Right, we got a question. Can you export those reports, and can they be imported into like a BI?
Yeah, so everything can be exported from finout using API or directly within the application. So here is a generate report. You can also download it as a CSV format and show the potential savings and in underlying services, and also like every query from the finout build, including Kubernetes, including stuff that we're going to show in a minute, is always exportable.
Cool.
Right.
Excellent. I hope that answers your question, Joe Av, Joe Lub. I love pronouncing usernames. If anybody has any more questions and a really funky username, feel free to ask it. So the cost, right? I actually was on a call just before this stream, and we talked about data transfer costs, and they seem to be, the mysterious data transfer costs. Is there anything that finout can do to highlight those?
Yeah, so data transfer is always one of the most asked questions in demos. It's a cost that are very, very hard to allocate. So finout does a couple of things that can make data transfer cost a bit easier. So first, if an instance has an outbound cost, we can just tag the cost from the actual outbound resource directly to the data transfer. So we can look at specific instances or hosted tags and see the data transfer cost that is associated with it. But where it's again a bit more complicated is with Kubernetes. So what we're just doing, we just launched it a few weeks ago, is the ability to allocate data transfer cost all the way to the pods as well. So we're looking at the egress cost from the host and the proportional usage of the pods from those network costs, and then we can allocate data transfer all the way to the Kubernetes pods. So you can start to see like what's the cost of a specific Kubernetes deployment or namespace or label or whatever, and which is a significant cost factor from time to time.
Cool. Yeah, really, really helpful indeed. So what else? Oh, you said about virtual tags, and I was like,
Yeah.
This sounds interesting. Tell us more.
Yeah, so virtual tags is one of our best-selling features and cost in finout. So like when customers start to have their FinOps journey and start to take cost into account, like usually the first question is like, what's the cost allocation? All right, so we're spending $1 million for AWS every month, great, but how does it distribute across different factors? And then we, first thing we do is we start to tag our AWS environment. But as you probably know, when customers are big enough, retagging their entire AWS account can take a couple of years. And not always we can always like tag every single line. So for example, if we're running a hybrid of Kubernetes and AWS, so Kubernetes and AWS are not taggable, in the same kind of hierarchy, or maybe there's an entire AWS account or stuff that are untaggable within AWS, like data transfer. So we always get into the point that AWS tagging is just not enough, and especially when running on a multi-cloud, multi-service kind of strategy. So what we can do in finout is we can we can retag stuff on the finout platform based on every single line item that we have. So we can take stuff from GCP, stuff from AWS, Azure, Kubernetes, Database, Datadog, Snowflake, whatever that finout is already supporting, and assign it to a specific specific team or specific feature or specific really whatever internal allocation that we have. So let's say we want to allocate our cost to a team. So I know that Kubernetes namespace, that RDS, that S3 bucket, and those every instance that starts with the letter I can go all the way to that team, and then we can take multiple teams and assign them into a department. So we can start to build that kind of hierarchy within the organization, and Now, everywhere that we look at finout, we have those kinds of virtual tagging. It's happening immediately, so you don't need to wait to us to refetch the information or something. Once you change the virtual tag, it's already live within finout, including history. And now we can like take an entire dashboard and start to filter it. Let's take a specific team, and you want to see only the H team that we just defined in the virtual tag. And we only want to see the S3 cost that is associated with that specific team. So, for showback and chargebacks workflow, which are, usually a very important thing to do with cost allocation, you can just, shoot those directly with finout without having to, recalculate everything into that.
This looks amazing. Roy, I want to ask a question about something you mentioned before as well. If we take it back up to that top level, what we do find is the cost of building something, the cost of running something isn't always taken into account in the product building decisions, right? That ideation. How much have you seen that understanding this then plays a bigger part in companies' future decisions about what to build and how to build it, whereas without this knowledge, they were kind of going in blind?
So yeah, 100%. I mean, looking at let's take this is an example of things working. So when we're looking at analyzing and building on costs, we really need to understand our internal structure. So here we have like let's remove all the end tag here for a second, so we can have like a better picture. So think of it that we can start to build a finout based on we can virtual tag the specific product lines that we have and the specific features that we're running. And using that information, we can start to build unit costs that I can show you in a minute, and also like track the growth over time. So once we take an architectural decision, even running, we have a report mechanism that we want to increase from 2 times a day to 3 times a day, right? This is essentially like can grow a cost by 33%, which can drastically change everything that we're doing. And it's very important to track those over time and take product decisions based on the underlying cost. So let's take an example here, and I think it's something that is like really interesting to understand. So unit cost is a very important the concept to learn within the FinOps world. I'm just gonna search a dashboard I can edit. So let's look at that. So instead of looking at how much money did we spend for AWS in general, what we want to do when taking architectural decisions is looking at the price that we pay for each unit. So let's imagine that our cost is that our product is creating transactions, right? So we are spending X amount of money to support Y amount of transactions. So instead of just looking, bluntly on AWS cost, which can always increase, which is probably okay. Like Black Friday is not really an anomaly usually, right? Because we're spending more money, but we're also bringing in more money, so we can run more transactions. So it's very important to start to measure cost per something. So here we can see like the cost for each individual transaction that we have across every line item that we have. We can also look at it specifically for AWS services, or for really every specific cost that is supposed to support that. And what we need to do is like identify our cost factors. So this is how our application is behaving, and these are the units that are supposed to to generate more cost and more revenue. So getting back to the report example, so here are all the Kubernetes namespaces, resources, RDS, whatever that is supporting the report generating mechanism, and here's how many reports we'll be able to run. Now, if we're going to increase that by X, would this still be profitable? So are we charging right per report, and those kinds of architectural decisions?
Awesome. Yeah, that is hugely important, I think, and particularly as we are starting to talk more and more to CPOs, product managers, and people making product decisions, the idea and the understanding of the economics of running and supporting a product, whether it is right priced, whether it is profitable, long-term, short-term, that isn't often well understood at all. So it looks like this goes a long way to help that. And for anyone who's in product management who is tuning in, there's an important lesson here, right? It's ultimately, it's not just about building the right thing; it's about whether it's profitable or not. And predicting that is super important. I would think also that the conversation then also like finout is a great tool to then have those conversations with your CFO and your finance people and have that regular, essentially roundtable across like what this is costing everyone.
100%. 100%. So I'm just conscious of time, everybody. So anybody who's just joined us, you've joined the Building SaaS on AWS show, and we're going through FinOps with finout. I just made that up. Thanks. And what we're going through. So we've got Roy from finout now. I've ruined my train of thought. So we've got Roy from finout talking to us about FinOps and going through the finout product and product suite. And if you've missed it, check out finout itself. I'll put the link there that we can see. So Roy, is there any other features that you want to demonstrate before we get on to the architecture and how you built this product?
Yeah, so I think one thing that is more of an advanced capability, but I think this is where we should all strive to get, is the ability to get our cost per tenant. So when building SaaS, our tenant cost is huge, right? It's something that we really need to understand, and this usually like the first line in our COGS is our infrastructure bill. And in order to allocate it all the way to customers and essentially making finance happy, we need to have that kind of joined language. So, as an engineers, we are building stuff. We're using newer technologies. We're migrating to Kubernetes. We're using every new single AWS shiny new service, and it's amazing. But finance can't understand what we're doing, and it's very, very hard for us to justify our cost increase. And again, as we mentioned before, cost increase is not necessarily a bad thing. So we can increase our cost, but also bring in more revenue, so we're okay. So when we try to budget, based on absolute numbers, it can be difficult things to do because, like, obviously, first we're not going to shut down the service if we're over budget, right? So we have a SaaS application. This is exactly what we're doing. But for better conversation with finance, we need to try to shift the conversation into margins. And when engineering team is working on a target and projected margins, this means that they can innovate, they can run super fast, they can do whatever they want within the underlying infrastructure, as long as that margin is kept. So with finout, we can help customers to allocate their cost all the way to their tenants. The way that we do it is by the unit economics that we just showed before. So we're building the service per individually unit economics, and then we multiply those units by the actual usage of the customers that we're using that. Including revenue information from CRM that is optional. We can show like what's the actual projected margin for each of the customers that we run. That way we can start to get like better architectural decisions, better go-to-market decisions, like what's our pricing strategy need to be, how our finance and engineering are communicating, what's the minimum pricing we can run, like what's the profitable use case and what's not. So lots of questions start to get answered when we're running and understanding our cost per tenant or cost per whatever makes sense for us or segment. Those kind of stuff.
I would call that a killer feature. That's an awesome feature, Roy. Anybody building SaaS. So that's the finout product. I think we'll jump into architecture next, Roy. But first, if you've just joined us again, we have a survey running. We're interested because we're running a show on cost optimization and FinOps. How are you currently measuring cost in your AWS account? So if you have an answer, put the number corresponding to the answers you see before you, and we will get an idea of how, if at all. If you're not, please put in one, and we'll know how many people are currently worried about cost across their AWS account, and what mechanisms, if anything, they're using. Come on, this is your chance, chatters, to say something, even if it's just a number. So, Roy, next we're going to jump into the architecture. We have 20 minutes left, so looking forward to seeing how you build this awesome product.
Yeah. So we built on AWS from day one. So we try to use AWS services where it really makes sense for us, in order to build like a very scalable architecture. So when running, we knew that we have a couple of underlying assumptions. One is that we're a batching kind of system. So we need to run data pipelines in order to fetch data and sanitize the data, and build essentially what we call the finout megabill. So the finout megabill that I showed in the demo is not just a marketing feature. This is our core technology. The megabill is our ability to sanitize costs from AWS and from other providers into one standard cost model, and have that very extensible. So Kubernetes integration is just us increasing that megabill and adding more infrastructure side into it. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to fetch costs. So we need to take costs from the AWS cost and user report. We need to take costs from Prometheus or from Datalog in order to get that Kubernetes kind of integration. But also we can take costs from, KPIs and metrics from external systems. So in order to create that unit economic view that I just showed before, we need to have the metric that, how many concurrent reports do we have? So we can fetch that from CloudWatch, but we can also fetch that from external third-party systems directly into Finout. So in order to do that, like we have everything in Finout is built on EKS, so running 100% Kubernetes installation. And we're using Apache Airflow in order to, build the data pipelines that you're running. So everything's our DAGs that we define by code, and a part of the DAGs is running Spark processes in order to, run very efficiently on very large data sets. So this is, the data pipeline kind of heavy lifting of Finout is essentially like taking data and sanitize it, move it, within several buckets until we get into the megabill. The Finout megabill is residing on S3. This gives us the ability, to do it, relatively cheap in terms of how we're serving our own environment. So, obviously building a cost solution, we were very minded about our own AWS cost from day one. And we wanted to change the way that the market is priced, and the market is like our competitors are insanely more expensive than we do. And the reason that we can do it is because we're saving cost on S3. But in order to overcome, the relatively slowness of S3, we're first using a solution like called ClickHouse that is running, a scalable cluster that can fetch costs from S3. But again, the secret sauce is in the way that we're modeling the cost in that S3 bucket. So we can still be the fastest solution in the market. We're still doing it very cheap. So this is an example of how we can take a go-to-market decision and back it up by architecture in order to be an enabler for for the way that we want to go to market with Finout.
Excellent. I must say, ClickHouse, having not came across it since the start of this year, I've come across it a lot recently. It seems to be really hitting the adoption curve at the minute. How did you find? Because anybody using ClickHouse, you'll know that columns. It stores in columns, and so it requires a bit of different thought when you're using it. How did you find that?
So our CTO is, the data person. So first of all, like, you're asking questions out of my league at the moment.
That's
but,
okay.
But yeah, like our data modeling is again the hardest thing that we needed to do in finout, and what we invested a lot in. So now that we have that kind of data model that is native to ClickHouse and still very compact on S3, we can add costs from more providers like very, very easily, because all we need to do is create another ETL process within the Spark process and then fetch it into that Megabill. So just as an example, like we built the Databricks integration lately into finout. It was done in a few hours. So just a matter of building that ETL pipeline, fetching data, sanitize it into the Megabill concept, and now like every other single feature in finout is automatically working. So virtual tagging is working in Databricks, and budget and anomalies and everything, because we don't build features for the specific providers. We build features for that Megabill concept.
So nice. Like what about latency? So these are all my personal questions from Nerdland, because I'm a nerd. What about latency between you grabbing the information from the account, and then you put it into Megabill, sorry, and then serve? What sort of latency we're thinking here, typically, between account grabbing and displaying?
So it's usually a matter of a few minutes for account. So it really depends on the complexity, the number of lines in the cost of user report, because like it varies vastly between different customers. Also, depends of their discount models. So some customers have like automatic ADPs, some customers have like manual ADPs, and it really depends on the level of manipulation that we need to run on the cost of user report after we are fetching it. So cost is a very complicated beast. Also, I know some customers are using like thousands of different AWS accounts. Some are only using one. So we always need to do that in order to build like the full view of everything that we're running.
Oh, very nice. Should we talk about multi-tenancy? So obviously you've built a product with a multi-tenancy in mind, and one of the key aspects of multi-tenancy is security. Doubly important when we're talking about cost. Like you mentioned, it is complex, and you don't want to leak that across tenants. So what sort of measures and steps have you taken to solve that problem?
So we built finout with security in day one. Like we achieved SOC 2 compliance like a few months after we launched the service. So something that we take a lot of pride in. So what we did is first we were sanitizing every single kind of request that is passing through finout. So we have like a centralized API servers that is running in Node, and like all requests in finout has to go through it, and it's always double checking that it's accessing the resources that it's allowed to access. So when going into running a specific query on ClickHouse, it's only allowed to go to the specific folder that is of the customer that is running the query. So it's very important for us to have that kind of segregation between tenants, and it's virtually impossible to jump between tenants, because like we always have those kinds of extra layers of protection and sanitation and whatever, but we always have that fail-safe mechanism. Like, here's the JWT token, like this is your account, this is where you're allowed to access. Like every request is sanitized with it, like even the most simple ones, so we can always make sure that accounts are never being jumped. It's something that is obviously like extremely important for us to achieve.
Yeah, that's an important lesson for anyone building that multi-tenant SaaS. Really, one safeguard is not enough. You definitely need to check every call for your customers' safety as well. Roy, we might jump a little to a high level as we start to wind down our time. So this has been a hugely valuable lesson in terms of why FinOps is important, why cost management is important. If you're an organization and you are still working that out or doing basic measures, how do you start a FinOps culture? Like how do you cultivate that in a company?
So I think FinOps is growing growing insanely, in the past couple of months even. Just look at FinOps Google trend. It's insane. We're proud to be members of vendors of a community called the FinOps community, FinOps Foundation. The FinOps Foundation is like organizing the entire FinOps initiatives we're running around. And a great place to start going to be on finops.org. Finops.org has lots of materials, reading exercises, and they're very good at building specific capabilities into the specific phase that we're at, and the maturity that we're at as an organization. So when building FinOps culture, we first need to decide that this is something that you want to invest time in. Then we need to read on, which capabilities are right for us per our stage. So most companies, when they start FinOps, as the FinOps Foundation call it, they're in the crawl phase. So they're just learning how to start. So there's a bunch of capabilities, specific in that domain for that crawl. Then we go into walk, and then we go into run, with the maturity and involvement of FinOps. So buying a FinOps tool is not going to solve your FinOps need. So you're still not going to have a FinOps culture, but you're just going to know how much money you're spending. But it's not like the only thing that you need to do. Now we need to operate on it. So companies should not start to buy a FinOps tool in order to start a FinOps culture. They need to start a FinOps culture, and then when they need to, when they understand that they're out of, they graduated from Cost Explorer, when they need a more a tool that can give them more visibility into what they're doing. That is when their tool is need to be bought. But FinOps is all about educating everyone and to be mindful of cost. So what our end goal here is for each engineer to understand the cost implication of every commit and environment change that you're doing. So same as we're deploying code, and then we go into Datadog in order to make sure that we're our SLA is kept, and there's no increase in latency, and no new errors in the system. So same with cost, right? So we're deploying new code. We just need to make sure that our cost model remains intact. It's unbearably easy for a developer to change the company's financial structure. It's something that we never even thought about this going to be possible a few years ago. But when a developer starts to understand it, there's going to start to be a fundamental change of culture within a company.
100%. I've been saying that developers are going to take over the world for years now. It's finally happening. When I initially came across the concept of FinOps and did some reading about it, I was interested about this. There's a tangible almost relationship between FinOps and environment and impact in environments. Do you want to explain a bit about that, maybe, Roy, and how that all ties together? It's quite a nice one.
Yeah. So cloud is one of the most polluting things that we're doing, on the planet, and FinOps has a strong correlation to it. So not every aspect of running FinOps will mean that we're greener. So, for example, buying commitments from AWS is going to lower our cost, but it's going to maintain the same level of pollution. But identifying what's idle. I think the latest Forrester survey notified that 40% of the instances is one level higher than what it should have been. 40%. It's insane amount of waste that we're running on top of the environment. So continuously right size, continuously terminating stuff that we're not using, and picking the right set of instances and the right set of regions in order for them to be greener. So maybe generating electricity in Ireland is cheaper than generating electricity in the US. So we can pick an instance that maybe cost a bit more, but take the decision to be greener. So AWS is starting to get better at generating those numbers and their third category kind of pollution reports directly within AWS and the cost and usage report, and it's super exciting thing to see, and I think there's going to be a huge implication on future decisions based on how green are we and how polluting are we.
For sure, and finout raising that awareness by showing you how much you're actually spending, and making recommendations on the recommendations on the savings plan, were fantastic. Yep, Chris.
So look, the last question is top of a lot of companies' priorities is going to be, where does my data sit? Data sovereignty. So finout being a multi-tenancy, are you across several regions, or is this all getting pulled into one big location?
So we're currently servicing most of our infrastructure out of the North Virginia region, which is everyone goes to, and I'm super afraid of the day that North Virginia will go down. I think no one in the internet will work. But
don't say that.
So this doomsday kind of scenario. But GDPR and regulations require us to be more mindful of data privacy. So we always keep users' information within the EU. So it's very important for us, to be to have that kind of data governance. But because of the finout architecture that we showed before, finout is a matter of launching a few EKS clusters, and we can be live anywhere. So it's a more matter of a decision. We're already servicing stuff out of CloudFront, so we have that kind of global distribution for very low latencies, regardless of where you are in the world, working with the platform. But data governance is also a huge thing for some of the countries in the world. We usually don't see PII, so it's a bit easier than kind of more sensitive information. But so a combination of the US and EU.
Cool. Well, I think we are almost at time. So if you're still on the chat, well, thanks for staying to the end of the show. We'll be running a survey from the start of the show on trying to gauge how you're using cost optimization in this very cost optimization centric episode. We'll use finout for FinOps. So at the minute, the winner is AWS Cost Explorer as the most used out there from our viewers. So that's interesting. I would say checking out the third-party SaaS products like finout is actually a nice place to start. So thanks to Roy for joining us, and thanks to Christopher as always for hanging in there. So the next episode will be in I believe 2 weeks, if not 3. Same time, same place. Is it 2 or 3, Christopher? Do you know?
So ideally it will be in 2 weeks, but
we may have an event on.
Yeah, we may have an event, so we may have to get back to you on that.
Yes. Well, anyway, we'll be on the channel at the same time in 2 or 3 weeks. So, and do you know who we're talking to in that time?
We are talking to Alkira. An awesome company that does cloud area networking. So we'll come back with them. Awesome.
Well, thanks again, Roy. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Really interesting.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks chat for being engaging, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye now.
Yeah. Bye.